imagine there is this empty jar, and this is the jar for collecting marbles. And every marble is a piece of you as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And you start collecting them as soon as you can by making notions of what you like, asking yourself questions. Let's say if you were left alone on an uninhabited island for a month, what kind of book would you not mind to reread over and over and over and over again? You don't have to answer now. Just think about it, answer the question, put that in the jar.
Right.
If you got to introduce yourself in the company of friends, tell about yourself, but you're not allowed to say a word, but you are allowed to mention a movie. Not as if you were a director of the movie, but that movie would reflect your personality, what that movie would be. Put it in a jar. And you ask yourself enough questions, make enough of those observations and attractions that you have in the artistic world. You suddenly look back and you have this whole treasure chest of things that inspire you and help you find the right path in the sea of many ways you can go about the art.
That's awesome. That's super cool. You should start a podcast called Jar Marbles.
Hey guys, welcome to Waiting to Dry, the least informative podcast on the planet Earth. Anything you learn on this podcast will be by accident, so don't blame us. So my name is Sergio Lopez.
I'm Josh Lawyer.
And we have Nadezda on the podcast today.
Is your last name just as hard to pronounce?
Yeah, and in Russia, we usually, when you address to a person in a respective manner, meaning everyone pretty much who you don't know, you usually use the middle name. So it would be Nadezda Konstantinovna.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that is
a little bit longer.
That's the most syllables, I think. You win the most syllables in a name for
Yay.
a guest. But there's some competition out there, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for having us to your studio/house working space.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing place. And your studio is awesome.
Thank you.
One of the cool things we get to do for doing this show is we get to see everyone's studios. And some are amazing, some less amazing.
Some you have to clear out a lot of junk. Sit down.
Yeah. So yeah, it's cool. You seem a lot more organized than most. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Racking up all the prizes.
It's got to be a treat to see all of those studios.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really awesome. I get excited almost every time. I'm like, yes, I get to see how they work. It's like I don't know.
Yeah, I think studio space is it's one of the most important things for the artist. At least for me. Yeah. Because I know that a lot of people would have studios and empty with white walls, high ceilings. Some people will have it decorated in a certain way. My studio, I usually call it cabinet of curiosities. So like all the little things that inspire me, because when I walk immediately, as soon as I walk into the studio, I don't want to spend time to warm up and to bring myself in that mental space of being in the world of, in the artistic world where I like to be. Right. So you just walk into the studio, you have this atmosphere already set up for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that there's a lot of like pictures and things set up. I've recently been thinking about art and how it's kind of like I'm not religious at all. And I've been slowly becoming like the closest thing I have is artwork. Like it's the one thing I think is sacred to me. And that makes kind of the studio like my little church or something. Like I go there and I deal with this sacred thing to me. It's like the closest thing. So
yeah, that makes sense.
So when I go like your studio feels like that. Like my studio is mostly a woodworking shop. Like I do a lot of wood stuff. So the painting part of it is very little in my whole studio, where yours, it like walking into it feels like almost like a sacred kind of like religious thing in a way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Every little thing in the studio matters, no matter how little.
Right.
I can tell a story almost about every object I have there. Some are recently acquired, some I brought from my hometown.
That's cool.
Like last time I went to visit my family, I brought this old spoon, wooden spoon. You look at it and you probably wouldn't notice it. You know, it's like one of those objects when you go to a museum and you just walk by some very boring shelf.
Yeah.
But then if you actually make an effort and try to read about it, you can find out some really cool stuff. So basically I brought this spoon. And this wooden spoon comes from my grandfather, I think. And it's in this very poor, distressed shape. You can barely see the ornaments that used to be on it. But there is something about it, holding it, and this textural, distressed experience.
Right.
And also the fact that it comes from somewhere where I'm from. It brings me back home. It reminds me about my roots. So
that's awesome.
And that's one object. Another object might remind about something else. So I try to surround myself with those things.
That's cool.
Yeah,
it's much better than me. I feel guilty now. I'm like, I have nothing. I have a couple things in my studio, but that's cool.
Everyone has their own ways. For some people, I bet for some people it would feel too cluttered, too claustrophobic. So whatever you feel like is the right thing for you.
Yeah.
Got to listen to yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Have you ever worked in a really clean white room sort of space?
When I worked for an art department for a visual effects company, it was very officey. The clean desks, computers. Even though I would use drawing tools sometimes, traditional drawing tools, although majority of work was done digitally. That was very clean space. Because it was within the office environment. So.
Right. So you didn't have the opportunity to put your own aesthetic on it that you wanted to?
A few things here and there under the monitor.
Okay.
But not too much. Not too much. Because there's
crazy.
Yeah.
How did you enjoy that?
Oh, that was lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a completely different experience. I would still keep the things that I like at home, but in the office, I still had a few things because I probably should say I was a concept artist for our department team, and we worked on movies.
Nice.
And maybe you have noticed in my studio right now, I have some props. I have some costumes that I use for photo shoots. Over there, we had something similar too. It was very minimal. It was like a starter kit.
Okay.
There was a little chest that had a few costumes because sometimes we would get to work on characters for a film.
Okay.
And the process was actually quite similar to my process right now when I work with models.
Oh, that's cool.
So I would say it was a starter kit for my studio, for what you see in my studio.
That's cool. So I always wonder because I just made this in my head was that if you're creative in your workspace, it's tough to come home and be creative. Did you ever find that as an issue or?
I guess because I found a way to separate concept art and personal artwork. Although it's a tricky question. Because right now, when I worked as a concept artist, I found a clear way to separate. Where right now, when I focus mainly on my paintings and drawings, I actually found a way to mix it all together, plus all the previous artistic experiences that I had for theater, for example. I was in theater for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Poetry. So I try to consciously bring all those artistic experiences, revisit them and see how I can implement them into the artwork.
That's awesome.
It's kind of like a journey for inwards,
right.
for self-discovery, because I truly believe that these are our superpowers.
We just said that a couple episodes ago.
Hey.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
I was like, it was just randomly, but it was like, it's kind of like a superpower, right?
It is. It absolutely is, because it's something that you know the best. It's very unique to you.
Yeah.
And once you know the craft of art making, all the foundations, you can just revisit all those places and see how you can contribute to the world of art from a very unique perspective.
Right.
And it's not an overnight journey. You have to spend a lot of time thinking, researching, reflecting upon things.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly exciting because you can revisit your childhood. You can revisit certain points of life and see how you can reflect that onto what you're doing right now.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. It sounds very similar to how I think when I try to create.
Oh, yeah.
It's all very based on like past things. We made fun of me because of some poetry stuff. I used to,
hey, you used to write poetry?
Yeah, it's all bad.
Hey.
But even like the last show I did a group of paintings for, it was based off of a poet a poem I really liked from another poet who I just wanted to see if I can portray it through artwork. See if I can. I just really enjoyed
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was really fun to do. And he's a good poet, so it wasn't like it wasn't my shitty poem.
That I think that's a great example. I'm so happy to hear that. I'm obsessed with poetry, by the way.
That's cool.
I'm obsessed. I grew up. My grandmother would speak to me in poetry sometimes because by heart she knows so many poems.
Wow, that's awesome.
And even recently, when we were working on the project, I Skyped her and asked her, hey, can you just reply to these certain questions in poems? She did it on the fly.
Wow.
So poetry, and I asked her, I liked her answer. What's your inspiration? How come you love poetry so much? And she's like, well, I guess I just have a rhymed blood. Rhymed blood. I was like, that's pretty poetic and in its own sense. But yeah, I think it's a beautiful idea to base artwork off poetry.
Yeah.
Because I've heard it somewhere that poetry is not meant to be read as a book sometimes. It's meant to be read out loud or heard out loud because there is certain rhythm.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
And and what I like about poetry as well is that it's full of symbolism and it's full of a lot of the times of metaphors.
Right.
And words are symbols on their words are symbols for the thoughts, and sometimes they can limit the meaning of what we're trying to say. But poetry sometimes in a more concise form can say way more than you can say in a sentence. And I think that's very similar with art. That's how I feel about art, that you can say so many things in just one image.
Yeah, we literally had this conversation on the podcast before because we were talking about how when we were breaking down this idea of making this poem into this show, I said the great thing is that you can take one line, and the way poetry is they're trying to make this one line so powerful. Where a novel, it's telling you a story through a ton of words, like just a large amount of words, where poems are so. And if you think of a painting like a movie gets all these images to tell you a story, where we get one to tell you one thing. So we have to make it very powerful in that one image, where a movie gets to tell you its story through 2 hours or whatever. And so it is this great thing that poetry fits so well with art because of that, because it forces you to limit the amount of material you use to create and say something.
Yeah, in a very concise form, and sometimes on a non-verbal level, where you know what I'm talking about, I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
It's hard to put into words, but we understand. We have mutual understanding. I think it's a beautiful place to be in. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, and like you were saying, how if you say it out loud, poetry, how saying it out loud, you allow it to also carry tone in its words. You get to insert emotion into each word you're saying. So it just allows it to be so much more powerful in that way. So that's cool.
And that's awesome. And some words they're like, one of my favorite poets is Vladimir Mayakovsky, not just because of the meaning and the metaphors and just the beautiful painting that he paints with words, but also the sounds. Some of the sounds, they sound, you read them out loud, they sound like brushstrokes. Brushstroke, powerful, aggressive, or gentle, or short, or long. When you read it out loud, it feels exactly like brushstrokes.
Oh, that's cool. I always say this to people and no one ever seems to agree with me, but I'm always like, man, lullaby, isn't it such a perfect word? I'm like, it's literally what it sounds like. Like you could probably guess what that meant by saying it. It just sounds like a song. It's just lullaby. Like they fit a song into one word.
Yeah.
It's weird. But
I like that.
Yeah, that makes sense what you're saying about the power of words. You hear it with different cultures too. Like Japanese men, they're very like their voice is very like powerful and like very grunty.
Yeah.
And then the women are very much more soft spoken, and it's I always thought that was interesting that they have like these tones to their words based on gender, which I don't know, might be bad, but I don't know.
It's just cultural. Yeah, it's just the way things are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Japanese know that the best. They're so cultural as a country. It's a crazy place. But I don't know. We went off in a tangent.
No, I loved it there. I visited once. I felt like it was one of the most alien, in the beautiful way, alien places in the world I've visited. Even though it's so advanced, and globalization is everywhere. It still felt like it preserved that strong tradition.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I've never been. My wife is obsessed with Japan, so she wants to. We're gonna go, I think, next year, but she's like trying to learn the language, and good luck with that. And
yeah, actually, interesting that you also mentioned the tradition, the Japanese tradition, because relatively recently I came across a book called Kwaidan. I would totally forget the exact name of the book, but it's called Kwaidan, Collection of Ghost Stories.
That sounds cool.
And it was very interesting. You know how everyone loves Brothers Grimm stories or Christian Andersen stories, but it was you know all of them pretty much. The most famous one all of us know, but it was almost finding that book was almost finding a completely new resource of the dark fairy tales.
Right.
Not for children fairy tales. They're very creepy. There was something Lovecraft about them as well. But anyway, highly recommend that book if you're into traditional folk story, dark fairy tales.
I'm actually like getting a little obsessed with ghosts right now. I'm trying to figure out how to use them as a symbol for my artwork, like where I'm happy with them. So I've just almost every other sketch in my sketchbook is a different way of me trying to draw a ghost.
You've been posting on your Instagram stories lately, right?
Yeah, and so it's because I like the ideas of ghosts meaning different things for different people. Like a ghost can just be something that haunts you. It's like that's the most simplest form of a ghost, and I always like symbols that are easy to relate to. And then there's other ghost meanings, but the main thing is just like something that haunts you. It's pretty much like past experiences.
Yeah.
It's just like how you were saying how a lot of your artwork, you're trying to interject your life. And in a way, I'm not trying to do that, but I want to make people think about their past in a way.
And I think even though the conscious effort you're saying of interjecting life is important, but I think it's also important to leave some things unsolved, just to trust your instinct if you're interested in certain subject matter, and you keep coming back over and over to it, but you don't necessarily know why. I think it's okay. I think you should just leave it, and maybe in a year, maybe in 5 years, you'll understand. Maybe you will never understand unless you have this. I think as long as you have this true attraction to a certain subject matter, there's a lure to it. Someone said we have to earn certain answers. And I think if you research it enough, maybe you will earn the answer. Maybe not.
That's cool. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I noticed in your work, you do a lot of like fantasy and fairy tale and like not a lot, not like overly done, but there's just like a hint of mystery or of like, some form of like you'll have like a modern, almost like Alice in Wonderland or some kind of, but not really. And is that just your love for fairy tales? Or
I think it's not I don't read fairy tales before going to bed, but I think it's certainly all of these experiences that I mentioned, like theater experience, for example. Let's start there. I have been acting in theater since age 7, and most of the theater plays that we had were based off Russian folk fairy tales. So if at that young age you're exposed, you're basically living those characters. If either you want it or not, they will be a part of your creative DNA later on. So I remember I started with the roles, super extra roles, where you're a flower or a pine cone or a piglet or all those little things that don't talk. They're just there. Exactly, a rock. And then you graduate into flowers, pine cones that talk a little bit or sing, but you're still surrounded by this world of fairy tales. So I definitely think it's part of it. And then, of course, later on, the fact that I worked in film for a long time, and in the area of film, the visual effects, where a lot of the work were based off imaginative storytelling. It wasn't documentaries, it wasn't fiction, it was film productions with a lot of imaginative characters in there. And I worked on a lot of characters, so it contributed to the same subject matter. So I think it all just mixed together, and I try not to overanalyze it. I can certainly look at certain pieces and track them back after they're done, but when the ideas come, I try not to overanalyze them. I try to let them breathe for a second, because I don't like forcing certain things on my ideas. I like to leave some room for interpretation. Even when I have an idea, then the next step for me would be to work with a person, like an actor.
Right.
And we do this during the photo shoots. I usually have this miniature semi-improvised theater with a little set, with costumes, with a brief, but loose enough brief so the actor could contribute to what's going on. So we meet in the middle. I always like this meeting in the middle space, and I think that's what creates the mystery, because if you outspell everything, then it's a monologue.
Right.
But if you say something and say something clearly enough, but then also leave some room for interpretation, for mystery, then you meet the viewer in the middle. Once again, it's not something I plot consciously. Oh, I'm going to meet those people in this place, in the mental space when I look at my artwork. But it's definitely something that I've observed about my own artwork.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I like the whole letting the model act. That's interesting too.
It's a lot of fun. You basically need to, I think, that the more you customize the process of art creation to yourself, meaning what you like to have fun with during how do you conceive ideas? If you can customize it to the way only you would brainstorm and you have a lot of fun, you do that. Then the next step, research. If you do research, you don't do research. So basically every step I try to customize. And since theater was a big part of my life, my photo shoots usually resemble theater in miniature.
Right. That's cool. I like that. The even also another thing is that your artwork, even though it has these like things like fairy tales or things, there is this like level of darkness to your artwork as well. Is that just because you like the aesthetic of like this lighthearted subject matter with also like a darkness to it? I noticed it a lot with like your sketches too. Like your sketches always seem to have like this dark, ominous shadow behind it. And I'm always like, I wonder if it's just aesthetic for like to allow yourself to see the drawing, or if it's because you purposefully want that in there.
I can't say for sure. It's just aesthetically, I like the graphicness of the look, but I liked it mixed up with, once again, having worked in a more artistically stylized world, having spent my time in the school where I studied gestural drawing and a lot of stylized stuff, and then having spent time in Atelier where you spend hours and hours rendering something, I try to basically combine all of those experiences and see where I land. And I think the drawings, it's not a conscious choice. I'm going to leave this shadow dark, and then everything will leave some scribbles around it. And it's not a conscious choice. I just try to trust the process based on all of the experiences that I've had. I try not to pigeonhole myself. And in terms of darkness, the fairy tales that I grew up with, they're pretty dark. Not all of them would have a good ending, and they were very, very lifelike. Actually, I grew up thinking, well, no, I didn't think about it when I was growing up. When I was already, I don't know, maybe in my mid-teenage years, I started realizing that fairy tale of sort, the ones that I read when I was a child, it's kind of like a soft preparation for real life. There is a certain, even though there are all those fictional characters, there is a certain sense of harsh reality in them.
Right. You learn that about, like Disney movies, if you do any research on them, and you're like, oh, the real story is horrible.
Yeah.
America's definitely kind of sugar-coated a lot of fairy tale stories.
But, I like that the more different adaptations you can observe. Let's say you have the same story and you see the same story being interpreted by Disney or by production companies in Europe. Even if you compare French production with English production, with Italian production, all of those interpretations will be slightly different.
Right.
And I think as long as you keep your mind open and absorb all of that.
And the underlining message of whatever they're using those characters
Exactly.
for.
And even the visual language, it's so interesting knowing that there is not just one way or another to adapt a certain story. There is there is this wedge. And according to your taste, you can land anywhere instead of you can just land here or there.
Right. Yeah, there's a huge gray area of fun.
I love that. Gray area of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's... I don't know. That's just a thing of, I don't know. The gray area of life is always, I assume, the best. I was listening to someone talk because I think most artists will agree that like the beginning of a painting and the end of a painting always seem to be very fun, or like the highlights of a painting. The middle always seems to be a grind, at least for me. And I've heard it other people talk about, but this other person was talking about that and the way that kind of compares to life experiences, is like the beginning is fun and the end is kind of like I don't know if that's too fun, but
it could be very fun, because I've noticed that way older people can allow themselves do crazy stuff and get away with it.
That's true. That's a good point.
Well, children as well. Like my nephew, I haven't met him yet, but my brother shows me the videos. What that child does, there is no way a grown up would be able to get away with this.
Not at all. No. Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, old people do have probably more fun than us. Yeah. But us in the grind, we're just in the grind. But then I don't know. It just makes me think that you got to embrace that and have fun with that. Those like this, right? Because you hear it all the time with people who are very successful in what they do, and they always reminisce about the grind or about the hard things that got them to where they're at today. Like you hear it with musicians or whatever, and or they'll compare people who. They'll say like, oh, these kids nowadays, they have it easy. I had to work really hard, which I don't know if that's true or not, but it's this thing. I don't know. Have you ever seen the show The Office? I'm like a huge
maybe a few episodes. But
there's this line in it where the guy, he says like, he's talking about like, when I went to college, or after college, I used to look back at college like it was the good old days. And then I worked at this job, and now I work at a new job, and I look back at this job like it's the good old days. And it's like, and he says like, I wish someone would tell you when you're in the good old days, when you're in the good old days. I was like, oh, damn, that's good. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So, I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm literally.
Don't overanalyze it.
This is
a great creation area, as you said it.
Yeah, and then our podcast, we pick a direction and walk there, and then we end up in a place, and we're like, "What?"
And you always call it out too.
Yeah, it's because it usually leads to a dead end. How that works out, and then we're like, "Okay, let's
turn around."
Yeah. So, where did you go to school for art?
A little bit of
everywhere
here, a little bit of there.
Nice.
I studied in the Academy of Art in San Francisco. Then I studied in Safe House Atelier, which had a huge impact on me and many students who studied there.
Nice.
Mainly because not just the program was so strong, but also the juxtaposition of concept art part of the program and traditional atelier part of the program being side to side. That just blew my mind.
Right.
And also the level of talent of people who studied there. First of all, it was a very intense program, early in the morning till late at night. And
they weren't very selective about who would get in too, as well, because it's such a small little school. It's just basically a big room.
Yeah.
Just cut up into sections, basically.
Exactly. But everyone was like a family, and people who I studied with, I still keep in touch with. I'm still great friends with them.
And most people you knew online before you even started the school too, right?
Yeah. It's it was a spirit. I feel very lucky, just being just having been exposed to that world and being a part of it, because I definitely carried it through all these years with me. Once again, I think one should get as many artistic experiences as possible. A strong traditional atelier program, concept art program, photography, theater, poetry, you name it, as many as you can, because art is not just about standing there in front of a canvas with a brush and painting it. Or drawing it. It's not just about mark making. It's about
Sergio.
Guess I'm going back to school.
The school of life.
Yeah. I agree with that. Just experiences, like how you're saying, the more like creative things you're kind of forcing yourselves to do really do end up coming back and adding to your artwork in some way or some random, I don't know. Yeah,
and you have to be. It also, I think, helps with the invention part of the process, because you have to be a scientist, you have to be an inventor,
right?
And what works for one person cannot work for another, and that's something I realized in the art school when a teacher would be very insistent on a certain approach. You'd always have to keep in mind, learn that approach, but then question how you can customize to yourself. You can't just follow the steps of tutorial and do exactly the same thing. So I think that's when all those experiences come handy. I remember I did Muay Thai for a few years, like martial arts. And
so you can beat up Sergio. It's cool. You don't have to say it. We all know.
It was obvious before she even said that.
It will be a pillow fight. But I was thinking about how can you implement as many life experiences as you can into the artwork. I was painting, and at some point, because when you do a certain martial art, a certain sport, a certain physical activity, for a long time, you develop muscle memory. And there was a certain muscle memory in relation to the stance and the way you throw the punch and the way you just position yourself. And I was like,
Muay Thai is very like specific in their stance too.
Yeah, I think all martial arts. And I was thinking, what if I implement the same stance and the same inner energy? Because there's even this pendulum, this rhythm that's inside of you when you do this type of martial art. And I was like, what if I implement it into the energy of the brushstroke? And this is something I could think of only based on the previous experience.
Right.
So if you're a tap dancer, let's say, why don't you try putting your canvas on the floor and tap dancing with brushes attached to the soles of your shoes, for example? It's just keeping the scenario open.
Right.
Just getting the basics, getting the foundation in school, but then keeping it open. And of course, working hard, experimenting.
Yeah, that's cool. Huh. So did you notice anything from the Muay Thai stance that did it read different to you?
Definitely did. It gave me the stroke that was a little bit, it was way more aggressive. And I realized I would use it not for the painting as a whole, but for the parts that need to be more energetic. And it's something that you cannot fake, the energetic mark. You can't do it slowly dragging. You have to, like a whip.
Right.
And then you have to be aware when you want to use it. It's just basically contributed, because when you paint, I feel like I'm going through a range of different energy states. And you have to be in control of that, and you have to know which energy hat to put on while you're painting. Oh, right now I'm rendering a hand, so obviously I'm not gonna do that whip brushstroke. I'm going to calm down, and it's going to be soft energy, and I'm going to take my time. And then when it comes to something that needs to be expressed energetically, I change my mindset, and there you go.
Yeah, that makes sense. I usually use like outside sources for, and like a music, for instance.
Absolutely.
Like depending on the music, it all will change my energy. So I allow. It's kind of like what you were saying. If I'm something where I'm slow and need to be very focused, I'm not going to be listening to high energy music.
Yeah.
And then once I get to the looser parts, I get to change the music and kind of let that energy kind of like go through me into the artwork. Or that sounded hippie as fuck, but
no, I absolutely agree. I think that the power of music, even though it sounds cheesy, but it cannot be. You shouldn't underestimate it.
Yeah, I agree.
The power of music. I have different playlists, and sometimes it definitely helps when I'm not in the mood to get back into a certain painting. Oh, it's too dark and I'm feeling like sunshine and flowers.
Right.
You feel like I have to work on it today. So there you go. You put on the music and you're in that mind space.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
That's crazy.
Too.
So if you have to be in a dark place, you play darker music?
Yeah. And recently I found that I cannot do it late at night, because then I cannot go back to bed with it. Like I would have bad dreams and just thoughts that I don't want to have while I'm falling asleep.
And so you force yourself to listen to it when
I like that place. It's not like I force myself and I don't want to be there. I like being there, but I like being there for a short period of time. It's like you don't want to watch a horror film all day long. You just want to watch it for 2 hours in the movie theater, then get out in the sun.
Yeah.
Same thing I feel with this. I really like being in that place. But I definitely have to be in control when to stop and then get some sunshine, and then let's say the rest of the day leave to some lighter subject matter.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder.
That's why actually I try to keep, when I usually work on several pieces at the same time, I try to have a different range of darkness and lightness in the mood. Because sometimes you just don't feel like going to the dark places, so you work on a lighter piece. And sometimes like, okay, I'm ready for this journey.
That's cool. I like that a lot. I don't know if I could do that. I mean, the dark stuff. Although one of my friends, he's always like, dude, you listen to like emo music when you paint. I'm like, I feel like it's just relaxing.
Hey, if you listen to emo music and like paint bunnies, why not?
Well, it's not even emo. It's just, that's what he calls it. Because he's just saying I'm listening to sad music. Emo is like a whole genre of like, I don't know, music.
Right.
Damn, I had a question that was supposed to be super good, but I totally forgot.
I will come to you.
It was so good. It was probably the best.
I believe you. I believe you.
We'll
edit it in afterwards.
Yeah. And insert question here.
Clap.
I don't know if you ever listened to Radiolab. It's a podcast. But they came out with an episode recently where it was about Facebook, and they were talking about how they determine what to censor and what not to censor. And I found it very interesting because there's obvious things that you should censor, like, you know, like nude children or something like that. But they touched on how to censor art. And it was like a very interesting thing to me because it just made me furious, first of all. But, you know, I'm sure we all have like people we know that are artists who get censored by Instagram and Facebook because their nude drawing or whatever is too realistic or something like that.
Right.
And I just found it very interesting because I feel like art is like the one complicated thing they touched on, because
and it included photography, all aspects of
art. So the way they broke it down was that they were explaining how they decide what is allowed and what's not allowed. And it's very, you know, it's a corporate company, so they're very just like clear cut, this yes, this no. So it's like paint, yes, they get to keep it. I don't, they said if it's made out of paint, rock, something, it was like very, I don't know. They didn't say anything about photography. I have a feeling photography is pretty much a no for them as far as nudity is concerned, which, you know, it was interesting to hear their way of figuring it out. I didn't agree with almost a lot of it when it came to art, but I thought it was interesting. I don't know where I was going with this.
It's such a relatively new universe, all the social media. So it's almost like people are trying to figure out the boundaries, and some rules are harsh, some the rules are not strict enough. So I think they're still figuring it out because it's still very, very new.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say. Thank you. See, earlier we were worried if anyone was going to sound dumb, but it's just, I just absorb all of that. I'm just, but yeah, I just think it was interesting for me because we're artists, you know, so we're like the other, it ended up being where I was like, well, I would prefer me personally to have, I would be more fine with just allowing pornographic images to allow all art to be on these platforms, because although I don't think I think it's more you're censoring art, and the internet already has a plethora of pornographic images. I don't know who you're saving from. I don't know where I'm going with.
Yeah, once again, I think they're just trying to figure it out. And especially they're trying to take into account as many points of view as possible, because if I had children, I might have had different point of view than I have one right now. Or if I was from a certain cultural background, I would have a different point of view if I was coming from a different country. So all of these factors considered, they're trying to figure out what would be the best middle spot to please as many people as possible to join the network. So I don't know. I don't have a definite answer how I feel about it.
Yeah, there was as far as culturally, there was like a Filipino lady they interviewed, and she was hilarious. First of all, because she was like, I just let everything go if I'm in a rush, like it's a job. So she's like, if I have to do these many things, I'll just let everything go. And and then it's like, but then she was like, oh yeah, but she was also religious. So she was saying that she doesn't care if the artwork is artwork. She'll still block it. And I was like, that's interesting, because you still can't eliminate the human factor.
I wonder if in a fantasy world, if there would be a second degree of verification. Let's say you're an artist,
right,
and you got censored and you don't think it's fair, so you can resubmit, you can claim it with their art committee, let's say. I know it's a little bit involved, and I'm speaking fantasy world, but I'm sure there were plenty of situations where artists were banned unfairly.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So it would be great if there was a second chance to reconsider, because as you say, if that first reviewer, just by accident or because they were in the mood, they blocked them.
Right. Yeah.
Although I know what I'm talking about. It's a little bit too involved. To be true.
I'm happy I'm not in that world. That's the one thing I took away from that, is that it's definitely a tough job.
Yeah.
It was the one thing I had grievance with, but that's just kind of, I'm a selfish artist who only cares about art. So I'm like, it's the one sacred thing to me. I'm like, hey, stop being rude to art. You know? I don't know. But yeah, so that's cool. So back to school, you would highly suggest that Atelier over like a regular school, or would you say try it all out? Or
I would say start with one thing, focus on it, and be really aware of why you're doing it. Not because someone says that it's a trendy school, or not because your friends go there.
Right.
Just try to understand why you're going for a certain thing. Because first, when I didn't know what fine art is, I didn't know what concept art is. The first degree that I pursued was graphic design, because that's what I did. And I just felt like I need to improve on that. And then while being in school, I realized I met all these people, which is another important thing about the school. It's the creative community that you get exposed to.
Right.
And I learned about concept art and fine art, and it opened a whole other world to me. So I would say definitely pursue what you feel like pursuing, but keep your eyes and ears open.
Yeah.
And if you feel like 2 years into it, you feel more specific about pursuing something else or branch out, just do it. We live only once. I feel like the artists, as long as they spend enough time thinking about their current state, where they are at creatively, and where they're going, I think they would get faster to know themselves better. I don't know if it makes sense. Because a lot of the times, when I was focusing on concept art, I would spend a lot of times doing social things, which is also great. But I realized that I didn't have enough time to digest all the experiences. And then I decided, okay, now I have to find this balance of creating art, having social life, but making sure that I have that time of meditation and going inwards and seeing, because it's very easy to get influenced by what you see online, by what your friends are saying. And in order to have a strong stance, and the stance should be coming from who you are, knowing who you are, I think it's very important to spend a lot of time on your own.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Do you do any of that, Sergio?
What, spend time with myself?
Yeah.
Plenty.
Or no, not necessarily spend time with you, but like I don't know. I feel like the trying to be as like self-aware, or I don't know, because I feel like I'm naturally driven by what my body wants to do, or tell me, like when I need to go and get drunk with friends, my body just like instinctually does that. It just is like, I need to, and my wife hates it because I'm like, I don't want to do anything this weekend. And then the weekend comes, like, I need to go see people and talk and have fun.
Yeah.
I can't not do that this week. And then, but I'm usually a hermit. So I'm usually in my head most of the time.
Yeah, I understand your question now. And I've not so much before, but I'm trying to be more of that lately. Trying to go a bit more inward, even with my art and everything. Because I was always more just sort of influenced by like, just go with the flow, like of whatever's happening outside of me, and being influenced and willingly influenced by outside things. So, these days trying to figure out a little bit more of what compels me to paint and why and all that. Asking more why questions to myself, basically.
Yeah.
Not expecting to find the immediate answer right away. Just not putting too much pressure. Just keep asking it. Maybe someone in your head will reply one day.
Yeah, it's a hard part of learning the patience to have to go through that process of figuring it out.
Yeah. I mean, I've mentioned this plenty of times before, but like a lot of like the reoccurring ideas I have within my art is like the two I have are Getting Lost and Finding Home. Those are like my two reoccurring ideas that I just am always obsessed with. And the two concepts are like an open idea that allows me to like always think about about like the past and kind of of like in the future of like both finding home and getting lost is like just kind of being aware of those two things in my life, while at the same time allowing myself to like kind of steal people's stories. And that sounds horrible, but allow people to tell me moments that they've had through those two narratives. And it just forces me to always think of those, like those past experiences. I don't know if that makes any sense.
But yeah, I like that you have like a clear sort of thing that drives you that way.
Yeah. It wasn't. It goes back to like what you were saying, where when I started this, I was much younger, and I did that idea. I did like two paintings in a group of paintings, and one was called Finding Home, and one was called Getting Lost. And then like the next big show I was in, I did the same thing, just because I wanted to redo the idea, and then it just kind of kept reoccurring,
right?
Until the point where it just became a thing that I was just obsessed with. And I didn't really go into it. It goes back to like the ghost thing I'm kind of a little obsessed with right now. Is kind of that. It ends up being a past experience, and I don't know. But yeah, that's that.
You think the ghost thing has something to do with that concept as well?
Yeah. Well, I think the two big narratives are like things that haunt you and death, like like the farthest part of your future.
Yeah.
Those two things, and how I want to use the ghost as this fun, like kind of playful image to talk about the two, while at the same time being dark. So and it came from the same thing of me like adding a ghost as that, like as something that haunts someone. I don't know, there's this band called OK Go, who is not the best band, but they had this song on their first album, and it has to do with this person they loved, and this idea that this person used to haunt their thoughts, but it doesn't haunt their thoughts anymore. And the idea of the song is they're wondering who that person is haunting now. And I always thought that was interesting, of like, this, and just using a ghost as a narrative. And it's kind of funny because they're still obviously kind of haunted because they're thinking about the person, but they're also thinking, I wonder who's like tortured by the thought of this person now. And I thought that song I've listened to for years, but I don't know, it's kind of just like the storytelling with ghosts is, I think, a really easy and useful tool, at least for me. I don't know. I'm rambling on now.
No, I like it.
But enough about me. Let's talk about you. So with your art, I know you use a lot of like, I don't know, like kind of like they're not necessarily figures in the background all the time. Sometimes it's like a doll. Sometimes it's like a scary figure. Sometimes it's, I mean, to me, dolls are kind of scary. I used to have a huge phobia when I was a kid. But do those people or things in the background, do they represent things in the painting, or are they an overall idea?
I'm trying to think of anything in particular. I mean, I've definitely done some pieces with secondary presence, but I don't think that presence is literal. It's more of a tool for creating a mood. Just that fleeting feeling. Like the sense of smell in the room can give you a feeling of presence.
Right.
So in a painting, it would be once again, it's a lot of metaphors and a lot of symbolism, and I use a lot of props. Props when I work with actors, with models. And once again, they're not, a lot of the times they don't have a literal meaning. It's more about the feeling that you get from looking at them. Like, for example, scissors. The person holding scissors, it doesn't mean that she's gonna go and do some sewing, or she's gonna, oh, maybe she will, I don't know. But when I put this object, I just trust my feeling about those objects. Like when I look at scissors, I like the shape of old scissors. There's this intricate, figured out by centuries design that people still use from back in the days. The shape changes a lot, but it's still used. So there is history to the shape. That's one thing. Then it's a steel object. So there's something cold and engineered about it. And then also the sharp ends, there's a sense of danger. Yet it's not weapon. It could be, but initially it's not a weapon. So there are so many meanings and applications to just this one simple prop that can be used as a metaphor for a feeling rather than for a concrete tool.
Or build like tension or something like that.
Yeah, it's a tool for not concrete storytelling, but more creating a mood. I just repeated myself, but
that's interesting. I like the idea of like a scent in the room. That's really cool. Actually, I have to think about that a lot.
Yeah, it's all about because you don't want as I said, I don't like to dictate what the picture is about. I just want to create the space and then let a viewer enjoy themselves in that place, have their own journey.
That's cool.
With some clues, given.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like my process is so different, but I always enjoy, I think that way of doing it, it's similar, but I have like a very clear cut narrative. I just don't care if anyone gets it. It's almost like I put in I have a story I'm telling. I just don't know if I care if people know it.
I think if the story is true to you, if it's not something that's artificial, although what am I to say? I feel like if you put the real energy to the piece, no matter how abstract or how zoomed in on a story you are, you still will feel the energy, you still will feel the mood. Like with my pieces, even though it's one piece, but there's always almost all of the photo shoots that I have, they have a short script, they have a character description. Sometimes I even write monologues, but not for the characters to say. I would just read it out loud when I work with an actor so they know which mind space they should be in. In fact, when I lately started working with actors, the first thing I asked, do you like playing charades? Because I found this is the most fun and the most correct way for me to work with them, to bring that meaning without being too literal.
That's cool.
So
like that a lot.
As long as you put a real raw material in the beginning, it doesn't matter how abstract you're gonna go. If you stay true to it, So you however zoomed in, mid shot, close up, in film terms speaking, it will still transcend.
That's interesting. I like that. And one other thing that's great is that you're actually, because in my process, I very much at the very end of my painting, I'm done. Like I have no connection to the painting of where the process of actually thinking about people and letting them meet you halfway is probably something I should think about. That's a good thing to have as far as like allowing you're taking the viewer's experience into your process in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it's as simple as you have to have a conversation. on many levels. On the literal level, having a conversation when you explain to your model what to do, and the conversation in the process when you collaborate.
Yeah.
I feel you will surprise yourself more. You give more room for accidents to happen, and then decide later on either it's a good or a bad accident, because we are a bundle of our own experiences. So in order to surprise ourselves, we need to give that extra wiggle space for those things to happen.
Right.
And I think if constantly you will give that space to yourself while collaborating with a model,
right,
while experimenting with tools, while working on the painting, throughout all the process, you leave that little wiggle space, you will be constantly growing by surprising yourself. Because you need to let the accidents happen to you. Otherwise, you'll be repeating yourself.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an analogy because it sounds all so abstract.
I have nothing.
Okay, here maybe it's gonna be not a great example, but let's say you hang out with the same group of friends all the time, and you have another party like 20th something anniversary,
right,
and you let your friends to bring their friends that they trust. And then this new person comes just because you said, hey, you can bring whoever. And then suddenly you have this new wonderful conversation just by letting someone to bring someone else.
Right. Yeah.
And you didn't know who that person would be, but suddenly you have this conversation and it took you somewhere where you didn't know you're going to go.
Right.
So always giving a benefit of a doubt. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I always tell, you people, they like to, once they figure out you're an artist, they like to tell you, oh, you know what you should paint? And every once in a while, someone will say something. I'm like, that's pretty good. I need to remember that. But it's most of the time I'm like, I'm open to the idea, but I'm like, no, I'm not probably going to do that.
Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah. But every once in a while, someone will come and they're like, oh, you should do this. I'm like, you just thought of that right now? That's pretty good. So yeah, for sure you can be inspired by, I'm that's what you mean, right? Like the more you allow in, the more you might find like a gem of inspiration. Is that kind of, or like,
so I like to think of the process of letting your inner child to play for a while and letting the adult controlling brain to take over and just knowing the right moment for it to happen. So even I feel like when working on the painting, it's fun to let everyone has an inner child, but most of our adulthood we spend being adults,
right?
And we're only being a child when we're, let's say, go swim in the sea and we suddenly start splashing,
right? Our
friends or all of those things. But actually, if you make a conscious effort to find a balance between two, it might be a very interesting place. Because once again, going back to the energy, when you portray something, it's two completely different energies. One is controlled, analyzed, settled.
Right.
You have done this many times, you know how to do it. And then the other one, just let the naive part of you come in. Because you never know what child is going to say next. You never know what child is going to do. Yeah. But then you feel like if it's too much of it, you can you control it a little bit more. So having both mindsets at the same time, I think it's fun.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder how. I got to think about that. As far as like how you would, because we talked earlier, as far as energy is concerned and music, the way it plays. I wonder if there is a way, like how you were saying, being in the water and splashing. I wonder if there's a version of something that can draw that energy out of you.
Oh, music! I think that's actually a brilliant idea. Definitely, I have some playlists with Oompa Loompa songs. And
do you?
For sure, yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
When you feel like, well, we've been all too serious right now. How about we have some fun? Or you went too dark, too deep, and you feel like before talking to someone, you need to get out of that mind space.
Right.
Oompa Loompa songs does it.
That's awesome. Yeah. I don't even know what an Oompa Loompa song is.
I'm not going to sing it.
Wait, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I was thinking Teletubbies for some reason the whole time.
Why not? What's the Teletubbies song?
I don't know. I don't know what a Teletubby song is, but you do know what Teletubbies are?
I know. I remember watching them as a kid. They creeped me out a little.
Yeah, they're a little creepy for sure. So I don't know. The whole time you were explaining that, I was thinking Teletubby, but Oompa Loompa is very different. Creepy in its own way.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But good creepy.
Yeah, good creepy. Yeah. Who doesn't love Oompa Loompa? So we'll go to talking about your painting now. So
sure.
Yeah. Awesome. So we have, let me pull these up. We have, so we're going to talk about 2 paintings. So the first one is called The Becoming.
Mm-hmm.
And in the painting, there is 2 figures. Wait, is that just a head? So there's 2 figures. And one guy's wearing a welding hat. He's dressed very spiffy. Is that just a head? Is he?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like
Okay.
it,
I was like, I don't see his body.
Yeah, it's 1.5% to be exact.
Yeah. And he's got like a cup of some kind of, it looks like whiskey or something.
Yeah.
A hammer. And he has like a little, what are those called? Brioches or something like that? I don't know what those are called. Little flowers that go on when you're dressed fancy.
I like boutonnieres.
Boutonnieres? All right. I'm very unfancy, obviously. And he has suspenders and barefooted. And then, so there's a head. I've never really noticed that it's only a head. For some reason, my body like filled in the rest of that person as he's sitting on.
I also just noticed that he's barefoot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that head supposed to represent him? Is that the same?
Well, narratively, I would stay away to explain the literal narrative story because
Okay.
I'd like to leave it up to the viewers, whatever the story is. Definitely the name The Becoming is the biggest clue I can give about it. But this character has, I have been painted him multiple times. He has a name. His name is the Instigator. And I just, in this story in particular, I was exploring normal person becoming someone else, something else.
Mm-hmm.
On a metaphorical, symbolical level.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
So here, I also love the general juxtaposition of the elegancy of the outfit.
Right.
This proper outfit with the industrial look of the welding mask.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
The elegant curvy shapes that the elegant clothes creates. And the blocky, shiny, scratchy textures of the helmet.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Same goes for the juxtaposition of Victorian couch, curvy couch, and the hammer.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, if I'm going to just draw my own narrative, if that's okay, I would assume that the head is the head of the man with the welding hat on or mask on, and that he is pushing away or trying to control the sane adult human version of him to allow himself I don't know, some sort of darkness or.
I like that. That's very close to the feeling when I was working. I'm glad to hear that.
That's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Almost got it.
Almost got it. No, you got it. Hey, you met me in the middle.
Yeah. And then like, so yeah, like I know welding caps or welding masks are used. The little slot you have to see out of it is very dark. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that plays a part as far as like he is going to a dark place.
It certainly does. There is some darkness about it's a mask after all.
Right.
Concealing the identity.
Yeah.
And especially the fact that it's an industrial mask that's meant to be used for heavy, hard manual labor. Mm-hmm. And the proximity of the hammer.
Even his body posture is like very slouched, which I don't know. All of it is kind of like a slouched the way he's slouching kind of even is like inappropriate or something with what he's wearing. It's I don't know. I think it's really, really good.
Thank you.
It
was a lot of fun to work on, and the model for this photo shoot. I guess the mask grew on him. Was a great friend and artist, Zach Oldenkamp.
Oh, is it?
Just first we tried this character, and then somehow it happened that after that, when I had scenarios with this character in them, Zach would always play this role and put up with all the madness and craziness. But he's really good at playing this dark character. He never breaks the character.
That's awesome. He's a method actor.
He's naturally good, and I think that's the other thing. I really like working with friends artists because they understand and they support you into going to those creative spaces. So sometimes you don't need to explain yourself too much or say, "I'm sorry, we're gonna go weird today.
Right.
Just don't judge me." You don't even need to say that because they understand. And makes the whole collaboration much easier.
That's cool. I've never shot an artist friend. I mean, no. I mean, Sergio, if you're...
Hey, next weekend.
Yeah. I have an idea about a man in a thong.
Right. The tiger stripe?
Yeah, tiger stripe. So...
How soon do you need me? Because I need to hit the gym.
Well, that's cool. That's an awesome character. So he's called, what did you say?
I call him the Instigator. Yeah.
That's a cool name. So all these characters, they kind of, you use them as like a way of telling this like story through multiple paintings.
So when I worked as a concept artist, one of the things that I did most of the time, even though you get to work on spaceships, creatures, environments, my favorite thing to do was to design characters. But when you work on a film project, you tend to work only on the exterior part of the character. It's either a costume, it's either visual effects that character related.
Right.
Sometimes it's a keyframe with a narrative, what is happening to the character, but you never go too deep into the psyche because it's basically not your job. It's the job of the actor who plays the character to go deep dive deep into it, and the work of director to be on the journey with the actor, right? So as a concept artist, I never got a chance to go deep enough, and I think that working on my personal projects with these characters that I create, I have a full creative control of exterior and interior parts and go as deep as I want and be as suggestive as I want. Because in concept art, you have to be quite clear. You can't leave too much space to imagination because you are part of a big team that's developing a character. And sometimes when you create an image of a design, I would say not just an image, design of a character, most of the time it's passed on to someone else, either a 3D modeler, or it would be present on set to inspire people who work on a scene to shoot a character in a certain way. So there are many applications, but it has to look clear, usually. With fine art, actually I don't like the word fine art. With let's say with my own paintings, I have a full creative control. I can be as vague as I feel like, and I can be as concrete as I feel like. And I think that's the beautiful part about creating characters from scratch and having full creative control from conceiving the idea to finally making it happen on the canvas and showing to people. So that's the biggest difference about this character or many other characters. But definitely the fact that I was a character concept artist for a long time, it's a bridge for me into where I stand in my paintings.
Yeah, that's
it's
awesome.
just I wasn't allowed to sprinkle poetry on top of my characters in concept art a little bit, but not enough because it makes things too obscure, left too much to interpretation, which is not what's needed. But when you work on your own work, you can live as much space, as I said, as you want. Sprinkle with poetry, put some theater in it, stand upside down, tap dance, whatever you want.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it. It's the full creative freedom.
That's awesome.
Do you still ever do any commercial work these days?
I do occasionally. Not too often. I tried, like this year, I haven't taken any projects because I really dive deep into this world of my own characters. I want to explore as much of it as possible, but I definitely keep in touch with the crew, with people who I used to work in film, and I definitely enjoy that bit as well, because it's a completely different story. When you're a concept artist, you're also a scientist in a way, but the way it's different, you work in a group of people. So it's a creative ping pong where when you're in the studio working on a painting, what do you call the tennis game when you play against the wall? When the ball... yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, and I like both. I remember when we would be in the art department and you would come up with a good idea and you shout it out, and then someone else from different side of the room say, how about you add this on top? And then this on top. And in the end, they have this juxtaposition of a lot of ideas that come together and you feel like a team. There's this team spirit is beautiful and I love it. But also there is something beautiful of something. It's very beautiful to be your own artist. I would say it's a much more terrifying place to be in, because the full responsibility for all the failures are your own.
Right.
But it's also a great and very rewarding place to be in, because if you find a way to take your idea to a place where you feel good about it, that's incredibly rewarding, because you create a physical, tangible thing. That's another question, actually. When you work in concept art, a lot of, especially for the art department that I used to work for, most of the work is done digitally. So it's technically, it's ones and zeros. Yeah, you can print it out, but there's so much beauty in creating this one-of-a-kind piece that maybe it's imperfect. Most likely it's imperfect. It has all the marks and the scratchings. And I feel like, when you see an old person and you see all the wrinkles and pigmentations, and you know that the person lived a life, and that's what makes the person look real, versus no matter how well they design the Android doll nowadays, there is this feeling, I know that this is a real person and I know that this is a robot. Right. And I think the same thing about paintings, just coming to the gallery or whatever space it's displayed in and seeing it in flesh, it blows my mind every time. I see a friend artist would post a painting on Instagram, and immediately I think it doesn't do any justice. It's seen at the size of the iPhone screen or computer screen. And there's a reason why you, for example, chose to paint a painting super tiny or big or medium size. There is a reason why you choose certain size, and there's a reason why you decide to go thick or thin, or all of those technical little things. And a lot of them get lost in translation of the monitors. And I think that's another difference between digital work and traditional work. Both have beautiful things about them. They're just very different.
Yeah, right. I totally agree. Yep, you said it better than I could have.
Oh, good. Good to hear. Didn't get lost.
Awesome. We do have another painting to talk about called...
Was it Secrets?
Secrets, yeah. And this one is a female with like a big headdress thing, and she has these like very pointy fingers. Whenever I think it's either this character or something similar, where they have these like long fingers, I always assume that it has something to do with like witches. I don't know why. My wife, she's obsessed with witches.
Maybe she's a witch.
She would love that you said that. Yeah. She's always like, I'm a witch. I'm like, no, you're not. Okay, maybe she is, but you're not, MJ. So I just by instinct, I'm like, oh, I wonder if it has something to do with like witches, just because a lot of your figures have some fantasy to them, and that's just like my initial instinct. I don't know if that's correct at all, or maybe I'm way off, or maybe it's not an answer.
I mean, whatever you say, that's what it is. But definitely, most of my female characters are. I like exploring the darker side to female character and witches and sorceresses. Is the word?
We'll say yes.
I think it's the closest character that's culturally accepted that you can turn to when describing a darker female.
Okay.
So I would say, once again, maybe it was a breach for me from concept art characters because I worked on a lot of designs of sirens and witches. I enjoyed a lot. Those type of characters, the darker female characters. So it was kind of an easy transition to put them into my paintings because there's a certain aesthetics about them. There's certain confidence and mystery. And I think because, once again, every person has a darker side to them. And because I'm a woman, I definitely like exploring the darker side of a female character in a lot of my paintings, and
that's cool.
And once again, like I mentioned scissors, I think the elongated fingers. There's a sense of danger. It's out there. It's like the cat claws. You know, they're out there. The cat is not necessarily going to use them, but they might. So there is this level of uncertainty and mystery to it. I actually I've made maybe four or five different sets of them. They're really fun to wear.
A thing.
Yeah.
Really?
I was wondering.
I have them in different colors. Mostly they're made out of metal because they make really nice highlights. But also I have one set in dark, thick paper, which looks also very interesting. But bottom line, I just really like the shape. The elongated fingers, there's something alien and mysterious and dangerous about it.
Do you make a lot of your own props?
As much as I can. I wish I could do more, and I'm hoping to get more into it because I really like, I think only right now I get to appreciate my previous theater experience more than ever. And there's something beautiful about the tangible prop.
Yeah, for sure.
Because even though a lot of those props, I can easily Photoshop them in, paint them in digitally, but I know that I would be lying to myself. I would definitely do it for production work because it's not about me. It's about bigger purpose. It's about creating the character for a big project. But I try to be as honest as possible to myself when working on my own photo shoots. So I try to create as many props as possible with my own hands. And once again, I should do more.
Yeah.
And I think I will do more because it brings me into the world of theater.
No, I feel the exact same way. I like to as much props as I can that I can either, if I'm able to make it myself, great, it saves me a little money. But I also love going on Etsy and seeing like, oh, that would be cool to use.
And actually, if you're somewhat Photoshop savvy, and I think nowadays artists, if they haven't, they should at least give it a try. It's a very powerful tool, not in a way you're gonna deny your traditional roots, but where I was going with it, I just want to say that the real props that you make, they can be enhanced. Let's say you're shopping on Etsy for a costume.
Right.
What if the costume that you need, that you have for your idea, is some crazy Marie Antoinette elaborate costume that you can only borrow from a national theater for thousands and thousands of dollars? And what if you don't have that money to spend? So what you do, knowing a little bit of Photoshop, you get the modest Halloween version of it, and then just see how, have a photo shoot in it, see how the fabric and all the elements of the costume interact with the real life environment. And then instead of creating it from scratch, you enhance it. And then I found it still remains in this reality realm. Reality realm. It still stays real, you know? So don't know. There's something special about having the real deal thing in a photo shoot, prop or costume.
I agree. And letting the person react and act with those things are so important as well.
Absolutely.
Rather than pretend there is this right here or pretend you have this. It's
hard.
It's so much better when they have something in the physical world to react to or
and you get to practice your creativity because you can, instead of if you need an expensive object like, I don't know, Pandora's box that looks very elaborate, you can just use a real just a shoebox that's very cheap and easy to get, but then you can enhance it later on. It's all about sense of invention. As long as there's something real for a person to hold, so the hand position is real, the interaction is real, you just tell the actor, just let's pretend that it's a real Pandora's box. It's very dangerous. You give all of those descriptions. The decorative part of it, which makes the real prop more expensive, is not important because you can enhance it later on.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Awesome.
Or you can, if you can, get the real Pandora's box. Why not?
Yeah. I got a buddy who owns it. So.
Oh, really? What's his name?
Well.
Oh, you're not allowed.
I don't want to open
that
box. But we went way off from the painting. But I was going to say another thing about The Secret, which is, I mean, I do love that the title's called Secret and she is covering her mouth. Like, that's an awesome, like almost like it's trying to slip out or something. I don't know if that's, I'm going to assume everything is on purpose because we've already tried to pull some answers out of you and you're very...
Everything is on purpose, but I don't want to force my purpose onto your your perception, because I believe that as long as my purpose is real and my intention is real, however you interpret it, even if differently, it will still feel real to the viewer.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
because I don't. I'm totally guessing here. A lot of the times you would come into and see live an abstract piece of art that doesn't have a concrete narrative whatsoever. There is some difference between one work or another. Sometimes I would walk by and have an intense emotional experience while seeing it. And then sometimes I walk by and I would just analyze the composition and there's no emotional connection. And it might be totally personal. But my guess would be about that initial energy and intention that artist puts into work. At least this is how I try to approach my work.
That's interesting. It's that kind of reminds me of like music. Sometimes I'll hear a song and it's like the perfect moment, you know, and sometimes it's background noise. I don't know if that necessarily translates exactly, but because sometimes a painting, I think. Like I've heard artists talk about like work where they'll like cry in front of a painting. And I've never experienced this personally, but I'm also not the biggest crier. Like it takes a lot of pepper spray to get me to cry.
If you're not interested going into that emotional realm, why going there? Because it's all about where you want to stay which emotional world do you like to stay when you're painting.
Right.
Not everyone likes to cry because it's emotionally exhausting.
For sure.
But I bet those people can achieve very powerful results because crying signifies the extreme of a certain emotion.
Right.
They're not just being sad, they're being extremely sad or extremely upset. And if they can emotionally be so strong and to carry through the whole painting process and express it, I think that would only make piece incredibly powerful. It's a tough thing to pull off.
Right. Yeah.
Because you have to stay there. It's not.
It sounds horrible to me, but for me to try, because I would just be.
Yeah, it's not for everyone.
Yeah, it's probably just I grew up with 4 other brothers. I think I got that right. And so when you grow up with 4 brothers, they like to beat up on you and make you very tough.
So you left your tears there.
Yeah. I should have been
inside your own personal Pandora's box.
Yeah, I should have been a child painter. That would have been amazing. But yeah, that's cool. Another thing about the painting was just with this like kind of witch character, or I think one of the cool things I thought about while you were explaining that was that I think it's cool because, like you were saying, witch is like a dark female figure. But I think one of the cool things is that there is usually a depth to that actual character. Like it's a more of a complicated thing. There's like a powerfulness of knowledge and usually some darkness, and which is kind of cool as far as like using that past history of that type of character is kind of a interesting tool you could have as like a
if you want to push you're definitely doing some research. If you want to push the narrative of the witch character, you can definitely use some research of what has been going on with witches in the past. Or but once again, I'm just trying, when I'm working on witches for concept art, that's when I would turn to real deal research on narrative basis. When I work on witches for my personal work, for my paintings, I try to add a lot of emotional and symbolic meanings that are not, they can be, you can describe this character as a witch,
right?
But that would be, I feel like, pigeonholing it, because the notion of a witch, if I say witch, some people might just imagine some green-faced lady with a this triangle head,
right?
And that's not what I want. So I try to not call things by their names. If you feel like she could be a witch, if another then she might be a witch, but I'm not gonna say it to you. I'm gonna give you all the clues for you to come to that conclusion.
And even when I look at these pieces, it's not even like I think that they're a witch. It feels kind of like they're a witch, but it's almost also they see like she seems kind of primal or like primitive, like a tribal. Like, tribes used to have like wise people or witches or whatever, and it also has like that feel too. It's not like a storyteller witch,
right?
Like I'm not even
like almost like a witch doctor sort of thing.
And it's not even necessarily a witch, but just that like it feels like some person that has this like dark knowledge or something like that to them.
That's great. I'm all glad to hear that. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Good job.
It worked.
I did it, Mom. But yeah, that I think that we'll just call that the painting segment. We never have
but definitely having this monologue, just to add the last thing about the creating a character. Let's say one wants to go to create this witch inspired character. I think it's very important to keep the internal monologue, like the sort of why question that you were mentioning before, about the figure that you're painting. Keep that monologue going and go deeper and deeper. And when you feel like you already went deep enough and it's good enough to go and paint it, just give yourself a benefit of the doubt, because there's always a way to take it 5 steps further. There's always a way. And once you get into that mindset that now you're happy with this character, how can you make it even deeper? There's always a way. And I think as long as you keep this mindset and question yourself about the character without settling on just very superficial description, it's a witch, she's bad, she likes making potions, she eats whatever, she eats beetles, she lives in a old house in the forest, and that's going to be my witch.
Right.
That's a very top scratch of the surface.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think after that you just need to go deep.
Yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of like I do that as well. Like I will trying to think of how to tell what I'm trying to say through a painting. I'll add little things here and there to a painting, and then maybe like I won't see the painting for a year or something, and then someone will ask me about it, and they're like, "Why'd you do that?" And I'm like, I can't remember. Like my mindset when I'm painting, everything makes sense, and I'm adding things, and I'm doing it for a purpose, but it's like, oh, you separate a year from my painting, and I'm like, I can't remember what that meant. It meant something. I was so in a like, I don't know. I think at least for me, I go in like these weird tangents in my artwork where I'm just trying to explain something, and it doesn't even necessarily have to do like it's like just background story. Like it doesn't necessarily have to do with what I'm trying to say. It's just trying to develop these characters and add maybe depth to them. But when someone asks me, I'm like, I it's like Inglorious Bastards. You ever watch that movie?
I watched it, but I don't remember the relation.
There's the character that Brad Pitt plays. He has like a scar on his neck from like a rope burn, but they never acknowledge or talk about it. It's just kind of like there to be like, what in his, like, it's just almost like his past is very crazy is kind of what that means. But
as long as the creator knows the real story,
right,
people maybe would not get the full explanation where he got that rope burn and what was the story, but they will believe it. Right. And it's better not to spell it out, because then you make the viewer feel stupid.
Right.
You're looking down on them, like you need to outspell everything.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. The usually when I have conversations, because I do definitely get into specifics, but I'll just say like, usually if it's really interesting, I'm like, wow, that's like really awesome. It's like a lot of times it seems like people will guess the opposite of what I meant to say. They'll say, oh, did this mean this? I'm like, no, I kind of mean the opposite of that, but it's interesting how you got to the point you got to, and I really enjoy that. And then I'll explain what I meant by it, but that's what I meant.
And both opinions are true.
Exactly. It's like, I am happy you enjoyed the painting for the story it told you, and this is what it meant to me, but it doesn't need to mean that to you at all. I don't know.
No, that's totally true.
But yeah, that's great. So I don't know. Did you want to do a top 5 dead or alive?
Sure. I think we had, let me see. I know there was a question somebody asked. Let me see if we didn't already cover it.
Oh yeah. It was something about, well, we kind of covered it, about like what influences you, like movies, TV, books.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's pretty much mainly what we've been talking about this.
It's pretty much also relates to the top 5, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Because my favorite artists are not from the world of course, there are a lot of figures that I admire, but I find the inspirations from people who come from the world of theater, world of concept art, books. I would just say a few from the top of my head. My most recent discovery was the work of Pina Bausch. I might mispronounce her name, but I think that's how you pronounce it. When I was doing a research about European theater online for a personal project, I came across her work, and then I came across accidentally the documentary called Pina, and she was a choreographer, and the best way for me to describe it would be she was painting with her dancers on stage.
Okay.
I can't even, once again, it's really hard to describe into literal words how her work feels like, but if you put poetry on stage, that's how it would look like to me, at least. So her narratives are very metaphorical. I don't know
what
how to
dance
describe.
Style is it?
It's her style. It's just it's not a ballet. It's not a certain style. It's just the style that she created. I would say the closest name for it would be probably physical theater, where actors, dancers don't talk. So whatever they are expressing, the narrative they're expressing is through the movements.
Oh, I've never even heard of that. It's intense.
but the how I knew that would be one of my biggest inspirations lately is that when I saw it, I didn't know what I'm looking at. I've never came across this. There was this immediate feeling in me. These are my people. The way they were saying things and how they were saying things, I didn't know any of them. Like her dancers, when they were talking about the experiences of working with her, I just had a feeling these are my people. And that I think that is beautiful, because a lot of the times artists, we spend so much time on our own, and sometimes it's a lonely place. It's a very lonely place, and there's no way sometimes you can explain how lonely it can get. But knowing that the artistic friendship stretches not over just miles and you connect with people on Instagram, Skype, however you connect right now, but also stretches over throughout the history. That sometimes you find books that artists would write about their experiences, and you find that, oh, they were lonely too. Oh, I completely understand the state of mind. You suddenly don't feel alone anymore. You feel understood, even though that person is long dead. So her work, I found, because that work is so very particular, like she created her own world, I felt that's another reason why I related to her, because she didn't follow, but you can see she had, I don't know much about her personal biography. I should do some research. It's just a recent find that I discovered her work. But you can see she knew all the rules of the dancing, but she created a whole new universe with a language that speaks to her, which to me was basically poetry expressed through physical theater on stage. It's very particular. Yeah, you should check out the documentary. Is very peculiar and beautiful. It's available on Filmstruck. Filmstruck is the service that it's kind of like Netflix and Amazon, but they have a big amount of Criterion Collection films.
Okay,
you can find a lot of rare films from classical directors from the far past, from the near past. It's great. It's a goldmine for inspiration if you're into that type of films. So she would be number one, I would say, out of the latest inspirations. Then relatively recent discovery was Peter Greenaway. He's a British film director. And once again, I love he has his own way of filming. You know how you see Tim Burton's film, it's Tim Burton.
Right.
You know how you see David Lynch's film, it's David Lynch. So Peter Greenaway has this own unique language, and the way I would describe it would be a perfect combination of film and theater, but in a very innovative way, which gives you a completely new perspective in cinematography and the way the sets are dressed, the way the actors position themselves in the story. Speaks to me aesthetically a lot. So that would be number 2. Number 3 would be, I really like costume designer named Eiko Ishioka. She was a Japanese costume designer. Once again, when you look at her work, she's definitely a standout. She was not just a craftswoman of costume design, but she was a true artist. The most famous costumes, I think, would be the costumes in the film The Cell. Have you seen The Cell?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about.
So that red,
she's amazing.
Yeah. So that was one of her designs. Bram Stoker's Dracula, that was her design. So you can definitely see, once you start getting her language, you start recognizing it in other films. And since I got to do a lot of character work in film and a lot of costume design, that definitely her work was a big inspiration to me.
For sure.
So that's number 3. I've named this guy. Number 4 would be this poet, Vladimir Mayakovsky. He was a poet of the early 20th century in Russia.
Okay.
I have his books downstairs. Once again, if you read his poetry, there is a certain rhythm to it. There are very unconventional ways how he chooses to write about his subject matter. There is a lot of metaphor. It seems like the way I describe all of these guys, there's the same aesthetics that goes across all these different genres.
For sure.
Which is very, very interesting to discover afterwards when you collect all those interests that attract you and put them in this jar of yourself as an artist. Right. It's very interesting to look back and see, wow, I thought those things are different. They're not that different after all.
Right.
And I feel like it's actually a very fun exercise to do. I remember when I was just in the art school, I was like, who am I as an artist? Where should I go? So I developed this.
Everybody's
practice.
Always worried about style.
Style, exactly. And it's a healthy worry. Everyone has this worry early on. But I think once you stop looking at the words like style and just the word style, and just start focusing on this journey of self-discovery. And I always try to tell to the students, imagine there is this empty jar, and this is the jar for collecting marbles, and every marble is a piece of you as an artist. And you start collecting them as soon as you can by making notions of what you like, asking yourself questions. Let's say if you were left alone on an uninhabited island for a month, what kind of book would you not mind to reread over and over and over and over again? You don't have to answer now. Just think about it, answer the question, put that in the jar.
Right.
If you got to introduce yourself in the company of friends, tell about yourself, but you're not allowed to say a word, but you are allowed to mention a movie. Not as if you were a director of the movie, but that movie would reflect your personality, what that movie would be. Put it in a jar. And you ask yourself enough questions, make enough of those observations and attractions that you have in the artistic world, you suddenly look back and you have this whole treasure chest of things that inspire you and help you find the right path in the sea of many ways you can go about the art.
That's awesome. That's super cool. You should start a podcast called Jar of Marbles.
Jar of Marbles.
That's awesome. I really like that. I got to start thinking about these movies and things.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever your inspiration, I think the fact that you mentioned poetry could be a very powerful thing. I know that's, tell me if I'm wrong. I think that right now, at least in America, I haven't seen poetry being a very mainstream thing for people to like, although no, I see sometimes, there is a poetry reading, why don't you come over? But it still doesn't seem like, did you guys study here in school?
I did. I'm self-taught.
Did you study poetry as a thing, like along with language by heart?
Like high school?
Yeah, sorry, high school.
Maybe like
Robert Frost. Yeah. Shakespeare.
Yeah, like little, Frost.
And you would memorize it by heart.
Oh, no.
Probably the most poetry kids read are probably like Where the Sidewalk Ends.
Yeah, Shel Silverstein.
Shel Silverstein. He's like a child. He writes like these dark poetry that are like kind of funny, kind of dark. Little poems kids would read when I was in elementary school. We would like love those.
Yeah, those are my favorite back in the day.
Yeah, that was great.
Because I think he illustrated them as well, and so those were they're these weird sort of illustrations. Some were pretty dark too.
Yeah, very dark.
That's a great example of bringing poetry to public. And I think why not? If it's something that really tickles your fancy, why not bring it to public in your own way? Like you were saying, how much poetry inspires you. By you I mean anyone who is listening to this. Right. If there is something that you think is out of the ordinary for the others to like, but it really, really inspires you. It's just, and maybe it's not obviously related to art. Maybe horseback riding,
right,
or gardening. There is always a way to bring it into the art world. You just don't know. You just haven't researched well enough how to do it yet. But I'm sure where's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
And I think combining two things that you love, or having them at least side by side so they feed off each other, is the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I totally agree.
No, it's awesome.
Yeah, and my wife MJ, she loves like plants, but she's horrible at gardening, so she's slowly getting better. Like she's slowly teaching herself so she can just have a house full of plants.
Huh.
So
that's a very. Are you gonna build an orangery? Orangery, like this glass house.
Like a greenhouse kind of
with birds of paradise and.
But I don't know. Well, we don't have much space. We have like a little backyard, a little front yard, and maybe.
You could build her a tiny one to start out with.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I've been thinking about a little one so that I can have some like herbs in my garden for year round without having the weather affect it.
Oh, that's such a good idea.
Yeah.
And you have it in the salad and you're like, I grew them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's from my garden.
All our tomatoes are growing right now. I'm super excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always tastes better when you know you grew them.
Yeah.
They just taste better. Even if I didn't grow them, if someone else grew them and gave them, I'm like, gosh, these
That's
are so
true
much better.
too. Yeah.
When I go to the farmer's market, I'm like, oh, this is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What did you put in this thing? But yeah, that's awesome. So that was your 5, right?
I don't think I reached the number 5.
So you have a 2D artist, either in history or 2D
artist.
Contemporary that you're into at all?
I would say I recently have been, once again, I'm trying to go back to just research the roots of where I'm from. And then there's this Russian artist, there was this Russian artist, Ivan Bilibin. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I don't know.
But I would relate, in order to put him somewhere on the art history scale, I would relate him to the artists like Art Deco artist.
Okay.
But in a very unique, traditional Russian folk way. He invented completely it's very 2D, it's very colorful. But he invented his own very unique language, and a lot of his paintings are based on traditional fairy tales.
Oh, this is starting to sound familiar. Yeah.
There's one of the most famous ones is in the illustration about girl going into the forest, and she's standing with a stick, and on top of the stick there's a skull that has shining eyes, and she's coming up to the house of Baba Yaga.
Okay.
Who's this witch? I don't know, but if you look him up, I'm sure you'll say, "Oh, I know this guy." And I just, once again, I really appreciate the strength of invention of that guy. He just took, he's relatively contemporary. He's not alive anymore, but taking the whole art history scale. And he completely invented his own language. And I think it's so beautiful. Awesome. When he got to a point where you can't really compare. He was just combining things that he loved. And
for me, that's the highest level, being able to create your own visual language.
Yeah, and it takes time. I think it's just time and self-investigation.
Yeah,
and just putting ahead of a scientist from time to time, because it's people, some people who are not who are art observers, who are not particularly artists themselves. I've met some people who have this notion of an artist, a very romantic figure standing in front of the easel,
right?
Where it's not just that. There's, of course, some romantic mood about life of an artist, but there's also a lot of scientific things that and experimentations that the artists do that people just don't know about.
Yeah, for sure.
What's going on behind the scenes, all the effort, all the hard work. It's not just about putting paint on canvas.
I totally agree with that. The romanticized idea of an artist, I think, is the same as if I say, think of a jazz player, and it's a smoky room with sepia tone. And you don't think about him in front of his piano at home for hours or whatever.
Same as a ballet dancer jump.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is so beautiful and light and elevated.
Right.
The jump was a lot of hard work, sweat and blood.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think
and
that
toenails.
Yeah, you have to love that hard work. You have to love that sweat and blood.
The grind.
Yeah.
All that lovely gray area. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's what we live for.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
That's what makes us feel alive.
So I know did your show just finish, or is it still up for a couple more days?
Last week.
Oh, last week.
Yeah, there will be a last week. It was wonderful.
Nice.
It was wonderful. It's always such a nice feeling to see all the kind
for sure
faces and have all this warm embraces from friends and people you don't know.
Yeah.
People you just meet at the opening after months and months of working on something.
For sure.
And a lot of doubt, a lot of just a lot of anxieties and a lot of victories and these ups and downs. You go through this journey on your own, and finally, that's it. There's the evidence of your last month's journey on the wall.
Yeah.
That's how it was. And then all these people who show up to appreciate it in person. I'm always very grateful when people make a journey to see work in person. They just don't limit the viewing online. If they have a chance, of course, not everyone has a chance to do that. But yeah, it was a beautiful opening.
That's awesome.
Lots of beautiful people. Yeah.
And so do you have anything you're working on now for future things, or are you?
I'm always working on something. And the thing is that I try to make myself not to think that it's for a particular project. Sometimes it's hard, especially if there is a deadline or if there is an ongoing conversation going on with a gallery, with the galleries you work with. But I try to forget about it, and I try to okay, the show opening is over. I'm just going back to what I was doing yesterday.
Right.
Just going back to this world and to the studio. Forget about the shows. They will be there.
Right.
And I know what are the dates. I know when the opening is going to be.
Right.
But once I put it in the calendar, I forget about it.
Yeah.
At least
that's
try
a good way
to.
Of thinking about it, for sure.
Because otherwise you will get this. It's already a lot of pressure when there's a lot of hard mental work involved in the act of creation. So why put an extra stress and the outside influence onto your own work? I think it's just removing that factor of, what people will think about this piece. I'm going into a new direction, and how they're going to perceive. I think that just forgetting about the deadlines will make it better.
Yeah. And I hear a lot of people, they get like sad after a big show. And I think it's
why
I'm not that way, but I've heard it from multiple artists where they get like depressed after a show. And I think it's that, oh, I hit a milestone. And then you're like, well, what do I do now? It's that, like, they set it up that way, where that the finish.
So the goal of their journey would be
either.
So the goal of their journey would be be the show.
Yeah. So that once they get there, then they didn't think past that.
Right.
They're so involved in that one concept or whatever that show that when they finish it, they get depressed. And
I would say it's a very zoomed in look at one's artist's work, their own work, because I don't see myself as an artist working for a show. I don't see myself as an artist working from 9 to 5. I just see myself as an artist. So whatever is there a show? There's no show.
Right.
There's 100 shows or one show a year. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I'll still wake up and do the thing I do in the studio.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, I like to say, it's not being an artist full time. It's being an artist fully. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, you're an artist. So the fact that the show happens, so it doesn't happen, it doesn't affect what I'm going to do in the studio tomorrow.
Yeah.
But the importance of the show is that you get the chance to share the journey with someone else.
Right.
I feel that it's one of the biggest pleasures and rewarding experiences when you get to share that art of that creative experience with someone else. I think it's a blessing to be able to talk to someone in a visual form, in a beautiful space that the gallery is.
Right.
I don't think of a gallery opening as a next milestone. So I think it's a skewed ideally from one show to another. Because I wonder then what's the meaning of painting is for this type of artists. Like, why do they create?
Right.
Like, what's the it's the simple question. Why do they create? To have a show?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them. I'm not that way. I am also not.
It's a rhetorical question. I'm not expecting you guys to. I'm just. It's a rhetorical question.
Because I don't find that much pleasure in the shows in general. Like how you're talking about it, I usually am trying to hide. like after the paintings are created, that's because I don't feel sad because I don't really enjoy the shows. I mean, I enjoy being around friends at the shows and talking to them, but I rarely talk about the art unless someone comes and talks to me about it. But for the most part, I'm trying to hide and drink a lot of booze and
So you're saying friends. You don't enjoy having your own shows, or you're saying you don't enjoy the shows in general, like going to them?
Like, I don't enjoy my own shows.
Is it because you're shy about your work, or you don't want to hear people's feedback? Or
no, that's not like for me, the creative, like art, like that's why I found it interesting with you, how you put the audience, like you want them to meet you, kind of halfway, like you, where for me, I'm too in control of what I create that I don't like. That all to me is the important part. How people perceive my art or things are like cool, but I don't get the enjoyment that I do just from creating it. Like creating it is everything to me. The people viewing it, I think, is great and good, but I don't know. I don't enjoy it or even care about it that much. I don't know. I'm weird.
No, I mean, it is what it is. It's different. We should embrace it's different for everyone. Some people just enjoy having their work stay in the four walls of their studio. I mean, it's fair enough. However you feel about it.
Because in a way, I'm like contradicting myself because I could be like the person that just does that just paints for fun, like the auntie but I do show it. People do give me feedback, and like Instagram, you do get like feedback, and there is a reason why you do that. It feels good for people to compliment your work and stuff like that. But
Instagram could be a slippery slope.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be good, it could be bad.
Yeah,
you have to be just very.
Yeah,
you have to be aware.
Yeah, I agree. And art shows, I think they're great. I don't know. It's just not my favorite thing of art. My favorite thing in art is just the beginning and end of paintings, pretty much.
I mean, it's fair enough. Whatever the art journey is for everyone, that's what should be. I don't think anyone should force anything on themselves. What about you, Sergio?
For me, I like my art shows because it's hopefully the biggest opportunity for people to actually buy the stuff. But yeah, beyond that, I could take or leave the exhibitions. But I do like though what you're saying about how you invite the viewers to meet you halfway in the painting, and it's almost like you're thinking about it, like the painting isn't even truly finished until it's exhibited and has a way for people to react to it almost. I don't know. It's at least that's how I took what you were saying, and maybe it's not completely how you were thinking about it, but it does make me think like, oh, okay, maybe there is, like, in a way, like leaving parts of the painting ambiguous in a way to invite people into interpreting your painting, and then that way it's kind of like the painting isn't totally finished until it's received by the viewer.
I can see that. Yeah, I think it's an interesting. I didn't think about put it into words in this way, but I can say that definitely about my artwork, because I don't think that I'm good at expressing my own thoughts in words. Sometimes I just keep blabbering and never come to the depth of the point I'm trying to make.
Right.
And just sometimes I feel like whatever I want to say, I just can't find maybe I'm just not a very outspoken person, but I do feel that conversation that I can have with another human being in visual form, in the painting, It's almost like when you go to a theater play, it's the same type of interaction. There's a passive, there's an audience that's a passive observer of the play, right? And maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's similar. So you have to rehearse a certain piece over and over and over. You create this artwork, which is the performance. I don't know if it's not probably a very correct analogy, but basically, that
made me think of, like, Josh and I just went to a comedy show yesterday. It's like comedians, when they create their things, like, they don't really know if a piece is truly done until, like, you get the audience reaction for it. Like, is a joke really funny until a bunch of people laugh at it? Like, they don't know until they exhibit their work in that way.
Interesting. I wouldn't say that the audience reaction, if they say, like, if they poo-poo my piece, they say, oh, this sucks, this is shit, I would probably give it a thought. Like, why do they think that? But if I still strongly feel that that's the direction I feel I'm going, I need to go into, I would think maybe the person who didn't like it is just
it's the wrong audience.
It's the wrong audience. Maybe it's just not their thing. So it's not like, if you compare it to comedians, if they don't react to the painting, but I still feel strongly about it, I would still be true to myself. I would just give a benefit of the doubt. It's like, it's just maybe that person is not into this subject matter on this mood.
Exactly. Yeah. That makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it's basically, the bottom line is you're stretching a hand while creating this piece, and either the other person takes it or doesn't take it.
Right.
It might happen, it might not. You might be standing there alone with just the hand stretched forward. But it's fine. You have to be able to accept that.
Sorry.
Pandora's box is calling.
I mean, it makes me think, but I think the way you're thinking of it is very much a healthier way of thinking about it. I think just because, I mean, we're trying to find an analogy that can compare within art forms, but for all art forms, I think if you like kind of think about them, they're kind of created for other people in general. Like, you don't write a song for yourself. You might write it to help you through something, but at the end of the day, you're going to want something else to hear it.
That's a good analogy with the song, because so how I think about, I think the good example would be, for example, concept art. You already know in the beginning that you're creating work for other people,
right?
And you keep that in mind. In personal work, you create work with the mind that you're doing it for yourself. You're diving into your own emotion. But in the end, it comes out to be for other people, because it's a human thing that you're experiencing.
Right.
It's a human thing that you're, I don't want to say telling to people, because it's going to sound too narrative, but it's basically a human experience that you're sharing.
Right. And that, I think that goes back to, like, art forms that really speak to you usually are because you see your past or your experiences through, it's like why a love song or a heartbreak song.
You relate to it on a human level.
Yeah.
And the only way you can truly relate by going into the true emotion that it's a weird thing. Like, you're doing it for yourself, but by doing that, you're doing it for others, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're kind of connecting with human beings through your art. The way you can speak the way you want, or say your message the best or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Wow. We went into some great stuff today.
I think so. Yeah, and you said you don't talk well. You just said you can't explain your theory.
I get too wordy sometimes. I just say 100 words when you could have said the same thing with just 3.
Yeah, that's the poetry in you talking.
Yeah.
Stephen King is like, someone that's into Stephen King is like, you could have said those 3 words in 1,000,000 words. Very subtly and soft.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was awesome. So we'll wrap this episode up. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, it's a lot for to absorb in here. So I'm
it's my absolute pleasure, guys. Thank you for listening to all of this. Thank you for being the ears and eyes, and thank you for sharing your experiences
for
too.
sure.
It's a great.
Absolutely.
If you guys want to look up her work, you can find her Instagram is Twisted Matter, and then your website is twistedmatter.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And and I believe we'll post the paintings that we talked about today on our social media so people can see them, or go to our website. It's in the 2016-17 section of your gallery on your website, in case you want to see it in bigger form than Instagram, which is always better. So do that. But and do you have any like shows coming up anywhere?
Well, this is the last week of my solo show with Spoke Art in San Francisco.
So we post this Tuesday. Will anyone be able to catch that?
Yeah.
Is it up until Saturday?
Are you going to post this on Tuesday?
Yeah.
So actually, Spoke Art is holding a book signing event on Saturday, which will.
Oh, you're going to be there too?
And it's going to coincide with the last day of my show, so it will be a lot of art and celebration of creativity. So please come by.
Yeah.
Say hi. And there will be a lot of artists from Bay Area who contributed to the Moleskine project,
right?
Which will be celebrated on the day. The book signing I'm talking about is the Moleskine project book. Moleskine project created by Ken and Rodrigo Love.
Yeah, Sergio, you were a part of that show too as well, right? So
I'll be there.
So awesome.
Be there or be there.
I'm supposed to be somewhere else, but maybe I'll change things around. It's my birthday on Friday, so I'm supposed to do other
mine as well.
What? The same day?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Are you going to do a birthday episode?
Maybe.
Interviewing each other?
Yeah.
Happy birthday to us. That'll be our intro. Just kidding. But so this Saturday. This Saturday, the 25th. Yeah. So if you're listening before then and you're in the Bay Area, go to that Spoke Art show. Meet. Sergio is gonna be there, and I don't want to butcher your name.
It's okay, Nadezda.
There we go. And a ton of other artists for sure. And that'd be awesome.
A lot of great people.
Yeah.
Go give us a smile. We'll give you a smile back.
Awesome. So this has been Waiting to Dry. If you're still listening, fuck off.
Sorry for not talking about Instagram.